This is a German piece. And you don't see these often, especially ones that work. I did take a few things out to show you up there. With the amount of stuff that's in there, everything can't be out. There's no place. That Santa has a story. My mom and I decided to take a road trip to Vermont, and I had decided I was going to do a Santa Claus. And on that trip, we found all these tiny little things for Christmas. And my mother was terminally ill for many years. You know, she had a disease that we knew would take her eventually. And on that trip, she started the process of dying, but didn't really, just thought it was like, you know, another one of her, you know, things that she would go through. But when we got home, she couldn't even drive home. I had to drive. When we got home, she'd gone to this miniature place that wasn't far from her and ordered that Santa, which was an artisan piece. The woman handmade each one to order. And my mom, I didn't know that. And my mom passed away before it came in. She passed away that November. And I got a phone call a couple of weeks later, and the lady said, "Look, mother ordered this for you, but you know, it wasn't paid for yet. Do you want it?" I was like, "Absolutely. It's regardless, it's like last gift." And I went to pick it up, and my mom was an artist. And when I went to pick it up, she told me it was the last one the woman was ever making because she was going blind. So the last gift from my mom was the last piece this lady was ever making. But a lot of the pieces in there, I got on that road trip to Vermont. This isn't even where I was bringing you today. We were just going up to my craft room.
Should we go and see?
We can go.
All right, let's do it.
Welcome to my exquisite clutter, which I got from Freddie Mercury because he collected tchotchkes. He called it his exquisite clutter. And I said, perfect! But a lot of things do have memories. I picked this up on a street in France. So things do have memories for me. He posted a picture of this in the craft group because they said, show us your craft room. And she's like, and where do you craft? I said, well, I started out with, this was going to be my crafting table. I could sew up here, that works. And, oh yeah, you got to watch where you're walking in here.
Oh, I walked on Chevy.
Oh. And then I filled it up. And then I got this. This was going to be, all right, I can work at this. But you know what? If there is a surface, I am going to fill that surface. Underneath, all the suitcases are filled with things. There is, I don't think there's anything that's empty in here. So if you see it, you can pretty much open something and be surprised. My mother sold a lot of the stuff that she made, so I wouldn't have her stuff. I have one wood piece she painted downstairs. She started this. It's a wallpaper box. She started it, but it was not finished. I found it in her craft room, and I took this one and one that she had completed, and I finished it. So it was done by her and me. But nope, I didn't. I don't paint. I don't do anything like that. I mean, I paint furniture, but I don't paint. Paint. But I have fun.
So, how did you start this collection? Like, if you want to take us through.
I always collected little things. I always loved miniatures, and even when my mother would take me, like, oh, what doll do you want from Santa? I always gravitated towards small dolls. And she would try to get me to get the big ones. And I always wanted the small doll. So I always had miniatures. And then after my kids were raised and all, I always had my mother's tin of buttons. And I loved going through the feel of that. And I started more with buttons when I really started buying things. And then I started doing button bouquets. And one thing led to another, and this happened. Literally.
It started with buttons.
It started with buttons.
And what kinds of buttons? Was there anything?
The average buttons that a housewife would throw in a tin. How many people they have grandmother's button tin? How many people have their grandmother's button tin? And they loved going through them when they were a kid. And that's really, besides my love of small things, that's how the collecting started, because then I needed more buttons to make button bouquets with. And I can't even imagine, before I started really learning about the buttons, how many really good buttons I probably used in a button bouquet. You know, if I saw a plastic button, a plastic button, you know, could have been a Colt manufactured button. I don't know, because Colt, the gun company, made buttons. This hat that I got at an antique store, it's all one pattern button, but these were all done by Colt manufacturing. And Colt buttons are very collectible. Then my holy grail of a button is a Colt Rouge button. Looks like a cameo and the top screws off and there'd be rouge inside. And it's a button.
Rouge, like
yes,
makeup.
Yes. But it's my holy grail button to find in the wild. I could probably go online and buy one for $150 to $200, but I want to find one in the wild. I love a bargain. I've found many things, you know, it's like I found her on a little local page, little bidding page. She's beautiful, but I didn't pay much for her because I love a bargain. You know, I'm not going to go, I don't always go searching on eBay or, if there's something I need very specifically, then I will cut corners, so to speak. For the most part, you know, it's out in the wild. I just got that. That's a Ringling Brothers clown. What do you think this is today?
Let me see. What do I think? What do we think that is? I'm like, does it hold something? I don't know.
It's a mold for balloons.
For that shaped balloon? That's a mold for balloons.
I have another one downstairs that it's the,
wow.
You know, it's that looks like a tall oval, so it would be more like for the round balloon. But do you ever remember seeing those flat balloons like that you blew up and then became the big?
Yeah.
It's a mold for balloons. So they would have these and the latex would like go over them. I need a balloon over this.
Yes, you do.
Oh. I have yet to find the balloon. Do. I actually do craft. It doesn't look like I've crafted anything, does it?
Oh, I think it looks like you've crafted a lot in here. I can see this piece, right? This piece.
That one.
This one up here.
No, that one I just put the head in a crocheted nest. But that one I made, that's like the base of a lamp and... Oh, goodness. I made her... Well, half the pin cushions, you see, I made. All of this and this.
Did you make this?
Yes, I just made that one.
And what is this?
That was a candy tin, a Schrapp's candy tin. This is I guess a Tolware in Ormolu. It's an Italian, a base from, you ever see the dishes, the fancy dishes that are on these toll bases, or they could be tiered, but I had the base with nothing to do, no dish with it, so I knew it would eventually. This is a chandelier part, and this is, the old half dolls that they had, the pin cushions and whisk brooms actually also. Most people don't know that they had the ladies' clothing. I'm stepping on something glass.
So you're always looking for things that you can repurpose and make into your artwork.
Most of this is filled with parts. This drawer is crystals from chandeliers. Lots of crystals. Oh, watch springs. Because guess what? Who doesn't need antique watch springs? But
Watch springs.
Watch springs. Yeah, be careful opening some of these packs. Multiples of this tiny spring, which are very difficult to see, makes a great rooster tail. Watch parts and fasteners and springs, and these will be the arms to something at some point. Brass findings. This drawer's fun. That's new, but the rest isn't. Like these are frame corners.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, nope, I have door back plates, and there's just, you know, I've made angel wings from curly cues, and there's a lot of fun in here. Some of the drawers stick. Salts and small containers, because I had done, there aren't many salts left in here. I use them, I make mini pin cushions. It's like, so I'll make a pin cushion with vintage fabric and put it in there and put some vintage trim. You would have individual salts with the tiny little salt spoons.
Like a salt pinch.
Right. People don't use them.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can pick them up relatively inexpensively.
Yeah.
But I made little, this is vintage fabric. I make tiny pin cushions, but I did a pin cushion in the hand. It's one of my favorite. And this is like, an old German, that's a big teacup, but it's an old German cup, a glass top pin. So I have pins all over the place. Most of the pin cushions in here, you see, I made, like, I did all of these, you know, doorknobs. So then, need a knob, I got a knob. What's in this one? Oh, I love finding old trim on furniture. This was actually in the trash on furniture that was totally trashed. And I was like, wait a minute. And I ripped all the trim off. Like, this is just cool. This is like a wire mesh. I gotta use that on something.
Definitely.
Here's, you know, chandelier and candle parts. It's like, gotta use it on something. And here I made from one of my frozen Charlottes. I made a little mold, and then I made that one.
The one that's in the frame there?
Yeah. So I made her. See, she's got a watch spring feather on.
Yes.
So those are celluloid charm strings, not to be confused with Cracker Jack prizes. Everybody thinks these are Cracker Jack. You go to a Cracker Jack page and they will bite your head off. These are not Cracker Jack.
So where would you
These would be
find these?
You didn't buy them. They were premiums. They were on tobacco bags. They were on bread ties. They were on liquor bottles. They were premiums. Remember buying that box of cereal for the prize inside? That's a premium and got you to buy it.
It's a giveaway.
Yeah. It would have the tobacco, like the cup plugs and all came in like the canvas bags, and they had the string pulls, you know, so these are string ties. And then they had figures, and he's missing his loop on top, but I think this one will show more of a variety. Yeah, I was fortunate recently. I came across it's Popeye, a lot of Popeye. These are celluloid.
Oh,
the Greyhounds.
You see those?
And I have, I think, where's my charm? See that? That's all filled with gumball charms in the bubbles, the plastic bubbles. So there's like the fake teeth and the hot dogs and the little wood spinning tops, and they're in the plastic bubbles that you would
What
get
decade are they from?
Those could be 60s, 70s, because they're not as, you know, fancy, but they're fun. That's the doll that I discovered there was no Santa Claus with.
This one right here?
That one, because I found her in my mother's closet. These were a bit newer. And, you know, I just thought they looked cool in the in the case, because I'm a little weird like that. These are older. These would be in the doll's heads, the glass eyes, a lot of time from Germany. And these were, you know, weighted, balanced, some. Then you had some of the eyes that were sleepy or turned, or these were obviously were more stationary. And I just love tucking them in. I mean, you will...
They're such cool objects.
It's like you'll find them just... It's like I couldn't point out to you and say, oh, there's some over there. But you will find... Like, I put a bunch in that. You know, the ormolu casket there, the jewelry casket.
Jewelry casket?
Yeah, the... a lot of these were... The women on their dressers had beautiful jewelry boxes.
I didn't know they were called caskets.
Yeah. Well, any old box can be a casket.
That's true.
I found those cards in France, the pink ones. Those are Salesman samples. There's writing on them and all from, you know, that's like from the 1800s. Look at those. Are they not gorgeous, the boxes? The packaging from back in the day. It's like, why did we stop making things pretty? Why did that stop? You know, I'm buying something and it fits in a prettier box. It's catching my eye. But I love finding boxes. I have them up there. They're in there. You know, I mean, the thread boxes used to come inside the box. You would find a little cutout that you could make a paper doll. And I mean, how brilliant, because now the mother had to buy another box so the daughter could get another paper doll in the series. I mean, it was beautiful and it was brilliant. Pretty much anything in here I really love. Otherwise, I'm not wasting what little space I have. Some things hold more memories for me. I mean, that little red wheelbarrow, I brought that back from my buying trip in France. And that was funny because, you know, to get it in my suitcase and stuffing bras on the handles so they wouldn't poke through the corners and praying that they didn't ask me at customs to open up the suitcase and see, you know, my underwear wrapped around wheels. And they didn't ask. I was so relieved. That's a floor lamp in the corner I made out of a mannequin, wire mannequin.
With all of the pins?
I started hanging the pins on it, just as but it lights up. So these are some of my collections. I like doll heads. I'm not afraid to use them in crafts. I love old books. I love feed sacks, pin cushions, tomato pin cushions. I have them all over the place. But they're supposed to be good luck. I mean, that's how those started out. You would place, well, not the tomato pin cushion itself. It was when you got a new home, you put a tomato on the mantle. It warded off evil and was supposed to bring prosperity. And when tomatoes were out of season, they would just take red cloth filled with sawdust and put that on the mantle. And that's how the tomato pin cushion evolved.
So it wasn't initially a pin cushion?
No, initially it was a real tomato on the mantle, on your mantle.
But that wouldn't last very long.
No, and if it was in the winter that you got a new home, well, tomatoes are not in season. So you did a red cloth with sawdust, you know, and made a fake tomato. And that's how the tomato pin cushion evolved.
And then women started using it, I'm assuming mostly women. I mean, maybe, used it then
and
to
then this
store
was
their
the
pins.
emery.
Yeah, what is this? Because I've seen that on some and not on others.
Strawberry, well, they probably just lost them. Most of them come with an emery. And that is...
An emery?
Yeah, that's what actually sharpens your needles. and keeps them clean. And they could be filled with crushed walnut shells, emery, like an emery board,
Yeah.
sand, because it sharpens the needles when it goes in. It cleans the needles.
So that's what that does?
That's what a strawberry is supposed to do. Now, I don't know if that one actually has emery in it. Even a really good pincushion, when it's made, should be made with some, like maybe a pouch of the crushed walnuts inside, so your needles are going in it. But that's what I have, a whole strawberry collection. And like this one has a sterling top. This is an emery. Whoop. That one's a real emery, and feel the weight of it. That's not from the silver, it's from the sand. And you can feel that one.
Yeah, it's got a lot of weight to it.
This one has a little weight.
This one's beautiful. I really like the top of this one.
I have some gorgeous strawberries.
I mean, these like everyday objects that I think I didn't know that.
They were
history
very
of
purposeful.
It, the story
yes.
of it.
Now, look how beautiful this. Now, this is new, but I have a woman in England. She has a wonderful page. She makes gorgeous figures. I mean, she's an artist. She dyes the fabrics. She made these mushrooms. I have a few pieces from her. But she just really does. I have a mushroom from her. The whole top of it is like a world exists on top of this mushroom. It's so beautiful. But, yeah, so that's an everyday object that they made. This one might have been on a chatelaine.
A what?
A chatelaine. That was, you know what chatelaine is.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll show you some chatelaine pieces. I don't have... the women of the household would have like a belt or a necklace with all the important tools on that piece. Most of the time it was sterling. So you would have, whether it be the keys or, it depended upon, I guess, which part of the house you were in charge of. That I'm not sure. But see, this loop would have been hanging. This would have been hanging on it. And this is a needle case, so her sewing needles would be in there. This one held the thimble and still does hold the thimble. I don't.
And this is all sterling.
Yes,
yeah, $9.25. Now, would just any household have sterling, or was it more
no, that's
upper
the
class?
Wealthier
Okay,
household.
I assume, but I just wanted
sterling.
Uh-huh.
Yes, that was the wealthier. But so chatelaine would have, the keys, the scissors, the thimbles, even there are some brooches that I guess they called them like grandmother brooches. I've never found one, but you could look it up, and the ends actually screw off, and there'd be a needle and thread that went in the brooch. And so
were people always sewing?
They were just always ready. Something interesting over here, as long as we're at this corner. I fell in love with that picture, and I had that hat, okay, which led me to this hat, which led me to the dog, which led me to that picture, which led me to that lovely fellow who's, with his handkerchief off to the side, and then the gift box of a shirt. This is a show and hut ringmaster from the circus set. He's got hats on there, so I was like, oh, it can go in my hat corner. These are advertising fans.
Advertising
fan.
Huh.
Yeah, so they pull out at the top, which they're very delicate, so I'm not going to open those, but they would pull out and a fan would open up. So that was an advertising fan. And because we're in the gentleman's quarter here, this, keep your eyes open for these, especially if you ever find them with the candles inside. You see that little hole? In here were candles. This is for a brothel. And when that candle burnt down, your time was up, so you better be quick about it. That's a brothel candle. And if I can, so that's, they were very short. Put the candle right in there, light it, and when that burnt down, you were done whether you were done or not. Or you paid more, I guess.
So is that Italian then?
This one, it would seem, is
Mhm.
I'd only ever seen one other, and it was French. And I never thought I'd have one.
Where did you find that?
Accidentally in a lot of ephemera, and this was in there. And I'm going through all this ephemera, and I came to this, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
You knew what it
I
was
knew
ahead
what
of
it
time.
was. I knew what it was. I didn't see it in the lot when I was making an offer for the lot. But when I got the lot and opened it up, I was very excited about that because I didn't think I'd ever have one, because those do go for quite a bit because they're paper. You know, how many were really saved? So this was my mom's. That's an end of, I don't know what they call that. Is it a make-do pin cushion? So that was, my mother was an antique dealer, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Ah,
She used to
so that's part of
bring
your origin
me,
story
yes, that is part of my story, because when I was a little girl, you know, antiquing was much different back then. You had your church rummage sales. They had auctions, which were generally like you'd go to Vermont or something. I grew up in Rockland County, so there weren't auctions really in Rockland County. But there was like a circuit of like these old ladies, and they were old ladies. And you would go to their house and you could buy right out of their house. And my mother knew them all, and she would bring me.
then. How old
And
were you?
oh gosh, was under 10 for sure.
Mhm.
So I'm 64 now. I was under 10 years old. And I remember Mrs. Herman, who at that time, she was in her 90s. She still swam every day. She lived by herself. She drove every day. And my mother would go to Mrs. Herman's, and I still have milk glass eggs that she hand painted. And then there was Mrs. Garifold, who had her basement. One wall was actually, I guess, shelving that she had put glass on both sides. It was like a separating wall, and became like a big dollhouse. So each room was a miniature scene. And from Mrs. Garifold, I used to get leather postcards. I would always pick out a leather postcard from Mrs. Garifold. You know, you had your feed sack like this, which was printed with, you know, company names and all. And you had people who were wearing clothing or whatever, the backing of quilts, you know, they used. But then companies, I think it was in around the 1920s, started to get smart, and they started printing, making pretty. Now, this is a full feed sack, one that hasn't been cut open yet, but it was
Beautiful.
mainly the poor who used the feed sack for their clothing. And it wasn't, you know, from the 20s to 40s, you know, feed sack clothing was out of necessity, and the feed sack fabric was a marketing. So the prettiest patterns, you know, the women would buy that brand to get that pattern, to get enough fabric to make a dress, or, you know, a blanket, or, you know, a lot of your quilts, you will find pieces of feed sack in them because they wasted nothing. But in the 40s, they went to, there was such a shortage of materials due to the war.
Mhm.
You had to, just like the victory gardens, women were out there and, you know, making the victory gardens. It became okay to make your clothing from the feed sack. And this, I'm sure many people remember, you know, recognize this as like pillowcases, but it started out, this is an opened feed sack, but it is a full feed sack. See, with the border, oh gosh, they could do pillowcases. It could be the border of a dress. And this is a full feed sack opened.
Now, I realize that possibly people watching this might not know what a feed sack is. Can you explain what that is?
Well, these, you know, earlier ones, the grains were sold in them and in bulk.
What kind of grains? Like,
Oh, your wheat and I had feed sack that I had sent from Germany to use for my curtain panels and for pillows downstairs on the couch. And as I was opening them up, there was literally bits of grain falling out. I was like, it doesn't get more authentic than this. If I questioned the validity of them, it's like, oh yeah, there's some wheat that just fell on the ground. So that was a a true grain sack. In the 40s, it became more vogue because it showed your patriotism, that you were willing,
So people of all classes then started doing it?
yes,
Ah, interesting. So it wasn't
because
out of necessity, it was some kind of
well, there were shortages of everything,
okay. So there was some necessity
There
there.
was some necessity, but now it was more a point of, national pride
Uh-huh.
that you were making your clothes, and there were clubs and sewing clubs and trading feed sacks and everything. It just became more acceptable. The history of things like, frozen Charlottes. I mean, it's
Frozen Charlottes.
these little dolls that I have bits and pieces of that I use the heads in crafts, and this whole thing has tons of pieces of frozen Charlottes, and I love old silk flowers and stuff from Milner's, from the hat shops. But these are a lot of frozen Charlotte pieces. Oh, that's an antique doll. But here's one. See, one this size would have been baked in a cake. See how tiny that is? These frozen Charlottes actually started in Germany in the 1800s, and they baked them in cakes and puddings and stuff.
Why would they bake them in cakes and puddings?
Rice for the children, you know.
So they'd be waiting for it to bite down on it?
Could you imagine nowadays? Oh,
Get a broken,
lawsuits,
yeah,
broken
right.
teeth, but yeah, no, and bath toys. But then later on, they became associated. It's like folklore. There's this story of this little girl, Charlotte, who was very vain, and she had a ball to go to, but she didn't want her clothes to get ruined by the blankets in the sled on the way to the party. So she refused to cover herself, and she was frozen to death by the time she got to the party. And that transferred over to frozen Charlottes because these dolls are frozen, but their original intention were bath toys, and they baked a lot of things in food. I've got a kit with charm strings that you would bake it in the cake and have the charm strings like sticking out so that you know crazy.
I love these,
You don't know
the
until
history of objects.
history. Okay. So it started, I guess, with my mother. Now that I'm talking, it's like, yeah, it was my mother. Charm strings. Now, this is not an original. I made it myself because, oh, if I were only so fortunate to find an original charm string. These buttons, they are little works of art. And when you start looking, really looking at these little buttons, they're just beautiful. And charm strings, girls used to get together. It was like you couldn't buy a button to put on your charm string. You had to get it from a friend or as a gift or at a swap. The goal was to put 1,000 buttons on. So the 1,000 button meant you would find your true love. The way you might get together with a friend, you're gardening. They would get together to swap buttons. Suitors could come and bring a button as a gift. Guests to the house could bring a button to as a gift for the young girl in the house. Friends would trade them, and so they were charm strings, memory strings. And most examples are found in like button collecting societies and museums and stuff. Look how gorgeous she is. It's a button. Everything they did was just so beautiful. If you were wealthy enough to afford it, that is. These I purchased this way. Those. I was,
This is how they were sold.
no, that's how I bought them. My girlfriend and I, we were driving to another town just to see what we could see, and we saw a garage sale. And I was, pulled over on the side of this busy road, across the street, and there was this elderly woman and her husband, and they just had like bags of stuff and stuff thrown on the ground and all. My friend focused on what she likes, and I was like, do you have any buttons? And she was like, oh, I think I have a bag of buttons here. Let me see. And she started going through, pulling one card out at a time. And that's about the time when I say, well, wait, how much do you want for the bag? Just what do you want for the whole bag? And sometimes, they'll be totally crazy and give you a price that you like. All right, let's go back to one card at a time. And other times they're so like flustered, I don't know, that they give you a price and you're like, oh, well, I'll take that. And when I got back to the hotel with my girlfriend, I didn't even know what was in there. I was like, you know what, this whole big bag, I knew it was a big bag, it was under $100. I know that some buttons can be very costly. And I was like, let's play the game. It's like, buying a lottery ticket. Let's just scratch off those numbers and see what we get. I got back to that hotel room and I was just, like a half hour, I was like, oh my God, look at this, oh my God. To get at anything, I have to move things. But let's see if this one, all of these were all in there, in that bag. This card. There were other cards also. This card. This card. This was from somebody else. And this was from somewhere else. This is like a salesman sample.
These are salesman sample.
Yeah.
So there were button salesmen?
Well, yeah, and they would go to the stores and sell the buttons. These are like railroad buttons. You have trains on them. Great buttons. Works of art. That was a fun find. And this is how I have to store things because I could never have enough furniture in here to hold everything that I have. So you have to get creative. I found this at an auction, but I should tell you, I worked at an auction. I'd never been to an auction in my life, and I was looking for a greenhouse. I was in Orange County, and I got lost. And I saw this building that said antiques. So I'm like, oh, antiques. So pulled in, and there were these two older guys with just stuff all over the place. And they're like, can we help you? I said, well, I saw a sign that said antiques. They're like, no, we're an auction. We're gonna have an auction tomorrow night. I said, oh, okay. So I went back the next day. That was the first auction I ever went to. It was the start of a very scary time in my life because I was like going to every auction I could. And then I wound up working for them. I just take the pictures, and sometimes I'll be, they have like a lot of like box lots and stuff, and I'll be like, this shouldn't be in here. This can stand on its own. They definitely have, they do like a lot of farm auctions. So, it's like I'm going over there to them like, what is this? What's this? And they know because it's what they're used to. And then I'm going over to them and saying, this does not belong in that box, And they're like, pull it out, Lauren. If you want to pull it out, and we'll sell it separate. Mm-hmm. But and I wound up at both places taking pictures for the auction, so I would see beforehand. This was one of the things I fell in love with. It's artwork for a greeting card, and that is a watercolor. And you can see, the pencil lines and the brush strokes and everything. Even though it's watercolor, you can see. Isn't that fabulous?
Oh, it's so adorable.
Is that not beautiful?
It's so well done.
I had two of them, and I sold one to a lady that I really like in California. And I wasn't going to sell either of them. So now this one I'm definitely keeping. But
now what year is this?
I think this is 40s, 50s. I think around the 50s. But this was the artwork. It's so pretty. It's so sweet. It's just so sweet. One thing I love buying are old magazines. This is from the 1800s because I feel there is no better source for information and knowledge on items than the magazines of the day, because it's right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. You know, lace mitts, so you really see the proper terms and the fashions of the day. Very accurate, because this is an actual piece from the day. But there was one section, I don't mean to flip quickly, but we'll be here a month if we go through every page. Look at what you could, all in one, the baby carriages, look how beautiful, the trunks.
These are baby carriages, and the price was $15.75.
The woven willow panel body. Yeah, that was a lot of money then.
So this is a little bit of everything. It's not just clothes.
It's not just, I think, this one I think is more for the women. Yeah.
What is that?
Well, these are novelties, dress and cloak ornaments. See, there's so many times you don't know when you pick something up. It's like, where did they use it? And you're always asking that, right?
Yeah.
How was this used? Where did they? And sometimes
stuff. We find some of this stuff now.
Exactly, and sometimes it's just guesswork. You know, you can only assume or
like educated, general information.
But I mean, here you see the buttons and.
Okay, and how much was
$1.25 a dozen.
Wow.
That's a cut steel. This stuff was more for the woman, but there is a page with the corsets that I thought was so cool, and they show a nursing corset. All right, we have to get to I have some of this trim. And that's what I love when I find trim. It's like, oh, I have that trim. I have this, or I have that. And it's fun because... So look at the wigs.
And the illustrations in here are absolutely incredible.
They gorgeous?
I mean, the details.
But this
the
is
amount of time and labor.
Best reference book you can find. And you can also, now you could see wallets that you didn't think were necessarily like leather wallets like this, that you might think, oh, that's like the 20s, or it was really the 1800s, because not everybody could afford the fancy beaded or the silver ones or the mesh one. But look at this nursing corset. Wow. Is that cool?
Wow. That's amazing. Huh.
I can't even.
God, the amount of body modification that that affected the woman's body so much, I would think, right?
What women went through.
Yeah.
I look at this to hold up the stomach for the. Look at the stays and the. Imagine having to put all these layers on.
It would take a lot to get out of the house. That would not be good for me.
Not be good for me either. I am a throw on the leggings and
ready to go.
Big shirt and let's get out of here. But the hair combs, the hat pins, which I have quite a collection of hat pins. And this is how this all starts. This is something I collect. I took out this one not because it's the prettiest one, but to show you why. Because I know you would ask, why do they have them all in a book? I have quite a few of these done differently. And this one had some provenance that came with it. So I liked that about it. These are samples. The women they crocheted. And they did bobbin lace, and they, and these are samples of pieces that they did to show different patterns, and they sewed, and this is a cloth, so they sewed them on. Look at that. It looks like a chain link, doesn't it? You've some
the amount of work.
Well, some of these are also done like bobbins. Like this is, use this to make bobbin lace. And that in itself, I can't imagine.
Have we even touched the surface, scratched the surface of this space?
No, we have not. What I wanted to show you in this, because I had discussed this collection with you once before, that I said I love the lace sample books. This one, she tucked in. Oh, is this one actually sewn in? That one's sewn in, so I won't take that one out. There are others I can. She had Who Made It. All right. This was made Mrs. R.D. Ward, 1916, that piece. So obviously people she knew. So some of these have the names of, I'm going to assume her friends. But these patterns.
It's amazing. And I bet each of these patterns have a name.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, there was in the back.
Oh, wow. What's this one?
Which one?
Next page.
There's so many to see.
That.
Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, I love that one.
Look at that.
There's just something about that one. I really like that. That's cool. Mm-hmm.
And now look at this. Do you see this? All this hanging down?
Yeah.
This was done. Let me see. I don't know if I have a picture of it here. I don't. All right. So this is. See all these threads on here? This is how they would make bobbin lace, which that would be.
This is a bobbin lace?
This one, because you see all the threads. So this would be, they would have like this pillow board that they would work at. And they start with all the laces, the strings coming down. And these, they are actually weaving, like in a pattern. They're weaving with these. So these are hanging down with the strings. This would be up in the lace that they're working. Look how fine that string, right? So that would be all hanging down. And they've got pins and they're separating and all. And these women are like doing patterns with these bobbins. And very proficient ones are going so fast. You're like, what?
Right. And as a job or as a hobby or what?
I don't think anybody did this as just a hobby.
So it was paid work?
You know, it could have been necessity, you know, for their home lace. It would be for work. You know, you had your women that, just did that.
So you think they were getting paid to make these?
Oh, it's a lot, probably.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot not. I wanted to show you a pattern book, one that was a little bit more interesting in the fact that she included people's names. Because to me, that's just a little bit more. It's just a little bit more. I view myself as a crafter because I feel like an artist is somebody who creates something from absolutely nothing, purely out of their own thoughts and mind, where I need to see something to spark, I can do that, and I'll put my own spin on it and all. So
I would say that's what artists do too.
I don't know. My mother was like an artist.
Do you have some of her work in here?
You had asked about pieces from my mom, and I said I didn't really have anything, and then I remembered I do have a couple of pieces. She did the toll painting was one thing she got into, and this was a piece that she had done and put in for exhibit. And she also did painting, the decorative painting on the wood. And she did this ship Santa. She did one for my brother, and I loved it so much. I was like, could you make me one? And she did, and I'm glad she did because, again, I only have these two pieces that my mom painted, but I love the details she put in. That's like the Crown Royal liquor in there, you know, that bottle that has the crown on it. And the pearls, even the pearls in it. I loved how she did this. And with the little whale in the background.